What is up, everyone? Chris Manning here from the Locked On Cavs podcast with my co-host, my co-pilot, my backcourt mate Evan Dammarell. On today's show, we're going to talk about Caris LeVert a little bit more. We're going to talk about Ricky Rubio and the Cavs missing him, and talk a little bit about Jarrett Allen not being named an All-Star reserve once again. That's all coming up today on Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Before we get into today's show, I want to let you know that it is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has more props, odds, and lines than ever before, getting you covered this season. That's BetOnline, and that's where the game starts. Evan, we're going to start with talking about Ricky Rubio, but first, buddy, how are you?
I'm good, man. About to finish up Legends of Arceus' main story. I've been kind of slow burning it, enjoying myself every step of the way. Cannot find that G-Dang Combi on a Ramanas Island still, so I'm just going to give up and move forward. Trying to find Alpha Rufflet so I can get an Alpha Hisuian Braviary, but it's like Isaiah Thomas said, it's all about that slow grind, you know what I'm saying? How are you?
Doing good. We'll compare some notes when you finish that, because I just beelined it. But
I think it's great. It's the best
very
Pokemon game I've ever played, I think.
That's very good. Okay. Ricky Rubio obviously goes out in this Caris LeVert trade. And I think this isn't a surprise. I think,
I thought you were going
certainly
to say Ricky Rubio's obviously been out. I'm like, yes, Chris,
yeah,
you are
just
correct.
you're stating the obvious, they got to cover my bases. But, maybe he's not traded. I think we assume he's not unless he gets hurt. That's one of the things of the season. Like this package for LeVert would have had to just structurally look different, probably, unless they were willing to trade Rubio anyway, which I don't necessarily know that they would have been. I think the vibe certainly would have been don't do this because he's been really, really important for this team in a lot of ways. But I've been thinking about Rubio. I guess like now that LeVert is in, and we kind of can think about what the roster is going to be. We talked about that before, but you look at what this team is now without Rubio and with the roster, at least we assume to some degree, a little more settled now, and they've made their post Rubio big move. They obviously got Rondo before. This is a much bigger move in terms of its impact. How do you feel like the roster will miss Ricky Rubio now that it is, again, a little bit more settled?
Well, we've kind of seen what it looks like while they've missed Ricky Rubio for a little while now. It's been about 3 weeks, I think, or so. No, it's been
It
over
feels
a
like about
month.
6 months. It feels like 6 months just because
I think it was
time
December
remains
28th when he blew out his knee. Let me look this up just to make sure. But I mean, they've had it's December 28th. Yes, they've had like a decent amount of separation from having Ricky Rubio on the floor and having Ricky Rubio not on the floor. I think he was very positive in his contributions to the Cavs while his time was here. I would not be surprised if he came back in the offseason on a vet min deal just as a positive locker room presence and kind of like pulled on the old heartstrings a little bit because the Cavs official account tweeted like a thank you to Ricky Rubio and Darius Garland retweeted it of all people. So I think they were pretty tight. So I think that's just the thing. But that's just the nature of the business, the nature of the beast. And I know we talked about starting lineups and rotations. It's an interesting thought exercise really about should Caris LeVert come off the bench or should he start? There's a good piece in the Ringer where they talked about the concerns about LeVert's overall fit next to Darius Garland, and maybe you have him just come off the bench and pick and pop people to death with Kevin Love. There's just a lot of things going forward. Like I think we'll have a clear idea maybe once we get like a good sample size of Caris LeVert as a Cavalier, and then I can truly tell you how it is. But like we know what life is like without Ricky Rubio. It was rough, and then they went and got Rajon Rondo, and Darius came back for a little bit, and it kind of balanced out a little bit, but we had a clear picture. It hasn't been pretty. Like there's obviously a lack of juice offensively.
Yeah, I think Rubio is going to be missed in the sense that he was sort of like a kinetic piece. I don't think LeVert is going to come in and replace him. And I will be
Oh,
curious to
no.
see like how the energy will just be different. It just will, and I think finding that new reality will continue to be in evolution. I think clearly he'll be missed. I mean, I think I was kind of wondering what like Kevin Love and JD Osman would look like post Rubio, because I think their bond was sort of key to those bench units, and like they've been up and down at times, obviously, but like they both just had some really impressive performances with Rajon Rondo setting the table for them. So like I think these guys are still probably going to get good basketball out of it, even if it maybe isn't as it just may come in a different way, right? And I think it begs the question of like, okay, so much of this team's success was those two guys playing together. I think we're going to now find out, like, does LeVert and Garland kind of can they provide that same kind of play together? Like, can they find chemistry? Can they find an ability to click in the way that Rubio
Well,
and Garland did? It's going to be different, but can
it
they
will.
click and be important? Like, can they find their own version of that in a short amount of time to kind of keep this train rolling along a little bit?
I think there's going to be growing pains for sure because Darius
Oh
had
yeah,
like the
it's
highest
inevitable.
usage rate in the league over James Harden before James Harden just kind of got pissy at the situation in Brooklyn. But like that's obviously going to go back down with LeVert in the fold now. I think JB is going to make a concerted effort to make him feel comfortable with the offense. Dan Devine from the Ringer just kind of like smartly pointed out like how will LeVert function as a player next to Darius Garland, not getting the ball in his hands and playing as an all-fall player. Like there's going to be some growing pains there. I think it's going to be a little bumpy at first. And Cavs fans are never overreactionary, so they won't think the sky's falling like Chicken Little when maybe like the first 5 or 6 games of Caris LeVert and Darius Garland playing together aren't exactly the cleanest. But I think maybe if you utilize some of like the packages and looks that you had Colin Sexton at times, that's a good way to get Caris LeVert acclimated too, especially in terms of slashing and things like that. But I just really do think like you can't replicate what you had with Rubio. Like you and I used to joke about the whole Olympic Rubio sensation, but it was a little bit of like lightning in a bottle, just what we were seeing from Ricky Rubio on the floor on a night-to-night basis. Like he was doing some truly just like wild stuff out there, like playing
Yeah.
with irrational confidence that you just normally don't see that relating to success. But that'll definitely be missed. I think there's just a spark. There's just like a certain magic. I don't know how else to put it. With how he played on the floor, whether it was with Garland or Kevin Love or Jetty Osman, like those three specifically. And I think there's definitely going to be some growing pains when Caris LeVert gets out there. And I'm just going to remain cautiously optimistic because I think this Cavs culture is strong enough to not fail at this point. I think J.V. Bickerstaff just kind of knows how to press the right buttons with this team. I think there's enough veteran presence in this locker room, and I think some of the younger players stepping up as leaders and holding the rest of the team accountable helps too. So there's a good mix of positivity that there might be a little bit of adversity trying to get Caris LeVert acclimated if they make another move to get another player between now and Thursday at 3 p.m. We'll see what happens, but it's definitely interesting to think about.
The thing I will note is that I think I would argue that these numbers aren't exactly 100% kind of in line with the reality, but the numbers do suggest that the Cavs like will be okay without Rubio. So Rubio on the year was like, according to the dunks and threes and kind of their catch-all numbers, was like an effective player, but like about average on offense and really really impactful on defense. A lot of his value came on the defensive end of the floor, where he was having like his best season defensively since like 2019. Which, if you want to track like him playing with Gobert and then playing with Allen and Mobley, like I think you can do some linear kind of reading there. The other thing is in terms of the Cavs offense. So Evan, for the year, the Cavs were this is from NBA.com. So like factors in current, garbage time and stuff. So for the year before Rubio's injury, so like including the whole year with Rubio,
Mm-hmm.
Cavs are 18th in offense, 109.8, and that's again overall for the year. Since Rubio has been out, and said from December 29th on, he got hurt on December 28th. They have the same exact offensive rating. It drops him down to 21st, but in terms of points per 100 possessions, like they are, like they have been okay, right? And like that is like if you want to feel like at least like a little bit optimistic about it and a little bit just sort of cautiously optimistic about it in terms of everything. And compared with Rubio, they were for the year like again they were the offensive rating has remained exactly the same, consistent. Like it has obviously ebbed and flowed, different lineups that made different things. Like Rubio's impact was defensive. The defense has pretty much maintained. I think he helped the offense, but I don't think it was like irreplaceable. If that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense.
No, it does.
Do you have I guess like just the last thing on Rubio. What would you be open, I guess, to him being a free agency thing that they look at in the summer?
Yeah, as long as they don't break the bank for him, I think that's unreasonable for sure. I think, like I said, if they brought him back on like a vet min deal, which I think is realistic, because let's be frank, Ricky Rubio is in his 30s, probably won't be a desirable free agent target because he realistically won't play until possibly even this time next year. And even then, let's say the Cavs do address their backup point guard issue, whether it's through the draft or through free agency or through a trade or anything, those avenues. It doesn't hurt to have Rubio on the roster as a culture guy, somebody for Darius to continue to pick the brain of. I think he really did spark this momentum of the positive, like Kevin Love contribution and just being one of the positive veterans in the locker room. Like, I don't think that's a bad thing to have because this is still a young Cavs team. But
Mm-hmm.
if the Cavs have to spend a lot, no. I think that's just the obvious answer. Like, I wouldn't hate it. Just wonder what jersey number you take if LeVert's here as well.
Yeah, because LeVert, as we should have mentioned, is officially going to wear number 3, continuing Rubio. I'm going to say the Rubio vibe broke the curse. So we'll
He
leave
tore
that
his
at that.
ACL, so I think the curse still won.
I'm
Just
just
saying.
speaking positive vibes into existence. It's like we skip over Derek Williams being like a really pleasant surprise wearing the number. So you know what, whatever. But
Well,
anyway,
Andre Drummond, Isaiah Thomas really do a number on people.
and Dan Waiters, frankly. But Evan, after the break, let's get into concerns about LeVert a little bit. We've talked a lot about the positives, the potential upside, but let's get into some of the continuing fit concerns. I think are a good way to kind of look about this practically to dive into this deeper. But first, going to tell everyone about TurboTax. People think unusual circumstances mean complicated taxes, but for TurboTax Live experts, that's what makes things interesting. We all have unique lives, whether you invested in crypto for the first time this year, you own an up-and-coming small business, or are raising rambunctious twins. Evan, as everyone knows, is raising rambunctious twins. Luckily, TurboTax Live has experts who can answer your tax questions, walk you through the whole process, or do your taxes for you from start to finish. They help you get every deduction you deserve, no matter your unique situation. And you can talk to a TurboTax Live expert through your phone or your computer without leaving your house. TurboTax Live experts are here to help you however you need. And if you need an extra hand off your taxes to them and they'll do it all for you. TurboTax Live experts, two TurboTax Live experts, an interesting life can mean an even greater refund. Visit TurboTax.com to learn more. You do your thing. They've got your taxes. That's Intuit, TurboTax Live. Evan, let's get into Caris LeVert. So I guess I want to start with some of the concern. I think that I would just say I think is the unavoidable elephant in the room is that there is an injury concern with Caris LeVert. This is not a guy that has been the healthiest player in his NBA career. I think like some of the on-court stuff we'll obviously talk about. We've talked about it a little bit already. I think the biggest concern I would have is this is a guy that, the last couple dating back to Brooklyn, 40 games in 2018-19, 45 in 2019-20, 47 in 2021. And this year's played 39 games for Indiana. So like on pace to play more games this year, which is certainly good. I think did have a little bit of a back issue, but 39 has still missed 16 games this year. So like in terms of not just like now, like is he going to sail through the rest of the year when you've kind of traded him to help you upgrade right now? And are you potentially looking at signing him to an extension? I think that is unfortunately like perhaps the biggest concern we should probably have about that.
Yeah, I think there are going to be some concerns about that. And frankly, there's a lot of concerns that just the overall health on a lot of key pieces in this Cavs team. They've dealt with it already. I think a lot of people maybe are ignoring that concern. I certainly was one of those people, but after we talked about it a little bit on Monday's live show, and I thought about it a little bit after the fact, like, yeah, I think there are some legitimate concerns. Like you said, he is technically on pace to play the most games in his career this season. His rookie season, I believe, was the 2016-17 season. The Nets weren't good that year. I think they were trying to be they were kind of just not great to begin with, and then they bounced back the following. Or no, they were still bad. And I have them up now, and then they bounced back the following year, and they kind of made some noise with it. Even they lost to Philly in the first round, but I think there's a lot of fun potential here. Maybe that's when you wonder: do you limit LeVert's minutes in usage to kind of get him one acclimated to this team, and two maybe prioritize his health long term as well too?
Yeah, I think so. I think a little bit of him being
injury prone.
Like, yeah, and maybe you don't play him. Like, maybe you don't put if you're JB Bickerstaff, maybe you don't play him as heavy of minutes as you might some of the other guys. Like, right, like maybe you can't play him. Like, if your impulse is to play your
He's
best players like
averaging
30,
31.1 minutes per game right now. Would you go a
it's like,
little lower than that?
yeah, I think I would, and I think like that gives you a core minutes. I think that gives you like some other guys minutes. I think certainly you want to like figure out like how to get him as many minutes as possible and how many he thinks he can play. But I think you kind of do have to kind of walk that line of that 29 to 32 range, and maybe you're hoping that keeps him fresher. For the playoffs, it's notable like he played 25 a game, basically 26 a game in Brooklyn, has played 32 a game on average with Indiana. We'll see where that goes with Cleveland. I think, Evan, the other part of this is I do want to just see, I think just looking at other guys, I do just want to see how, like, I suspect that if LeVert is going to work and maybe there's like another, like we've talked a little bit about like the Garland stuff. We talked about some of the, like his shooting and things. I think like him not being a plus shooter will be something that like becomes like a point of discussion at some point. Like his best 3-point shooting season was his half season in Brooklyn before he got traded. And that was in 12 games. That was 35%. He's never had like a full year. Looking at this, it's 36% in 2019-20. So like I don't know what was going on there. Maybe why was that an outlier? It's maybe worth trying to figure out. But I want to see which of the two centers that he'll be playing with in terms of Mobley and Allen. I wonder which one of those will kind of work out as a better fit with him. I tend to think it might be Allen, but I don't know if that is just because like these guys are friends who play together and like Allen just offers a clear lob threat. It could be Mobley. I don't know.
I think it's gonna be Allen at first, just because of what you said. They're friends; they have familiarity with one another. I know Justin Rowan posted a highlight reel of their time together in Brooklyn from them operating the pick and roll. Indiana, to be fair, doesn't really operate a pick and roll heavy offense. I think if JB really wants to get Caris LeVert comfortable, I stress this like on the live show as well. Just run some pick and roll, pick and pop stuff. And then he has options. He's got Love, he's got Mobley, he's got Allen, he's got Markkanen. I mean, Isaac Okoro could do some crafty stuff too, and also as a cutter as well, off screen and off ball as well. Like, there's some interesting stuff that the Cavs can do to get LeVert acclimated. But in terms of the centers, I think it's going to be Allen at first, and then we talked about closing lineups. Like, I definitely think it's going to have Garland, LeVert, Mobley, and Allen in it. And I think just the potential of those that foursome playing together is really fun. And then, like, the fifth player in that lineup could be a bit of a wild card, whether it's Rondo or Okoro or Markkanen or Love or whomever. Maybe it's Dean Wade who happens to be hot that night. Like, there's something there, and I think once you establish that familiarity, you can really unlock some interesting stuff in this offense, because I want to see more of Darius Garland playing off ball, too, at times.
Yes.
Like, I don't think they need to do, like, buddy ball situations where it's Darius's turn and then Caris LeVert's turn, and they just go back and forth every possession. But, like, there's opportunities.
That's not how LeVert's even like. That's not what makes LeVert interesting. That's like not.
No, I know.
If you do that with him, you're asking him to fail. I'm just saying for the listeners, like if people are expecting LeVert to come in and just like do that stuff, you're going to be set up to be disappointed, I think.
No, I know, but like I think I'm partially tempering expectations. So I'm just thinking like Allen is the baseline to get him comfortable. I think Kevin Love as well. I think just having a reliable 3-point shooter, not reliable, but like a very good career-wise 3-point shooter in Kevin Love is like a very good way to get a player comfortable in terms of spacing. Maybe you just get, because he is really good at driving to the basket. Like, that is something people stressed a lot. Like, the Cavs are the 29th ranked team in terms of driving to the basket. And LeVert's definitely going to help heighten that number. I think if you add Love as like a pick and pop partner, and LeVert just holds the ball and he drives to the basket, like, Love's gravity is obviously going to draw the defender from the paint. And it's going to make his life a lot easier, too, and help him get a little bit more comfortable with some of how the offensive schemes work. But I think it's going to be Allen and maybe Love as well. And then Mobley's just going to be a bit of a wild card, because I think Mobley's just so talented. I think you can kind of just make it work in general.
Yeah, I think like LeVert like running around with Mobley in terms of like him running around screens, them running some 2-man action could be really fun. Just of note, so far this year, this is from Cleaning the Glass. Love with Allen and with Mobley off the floor has 738 possessions tracked. That is those lineups again. So that's Love with Allen, no Mobley, plus 10.2 per 100 possessions, scoring 114.1 per 100 possessions, and giving up 103.9. That's really, really good on aggregate. Like, again, there's a lot of like small sample size in there. Like, there's a lot of stuff all over the place. overall, like those have been good, and that's with like the most common one, which was Rubio, Okoro, Market, and Love Allen being atrocious. On the flip side, Love without Allen and with Mobley, 882 possessions, so it's been used a little bit more, plus 1.1 per 100 possessions, scoring 109.9 points per 100 possessions, which is about what the Cavs' offensive rating is anyway, and then giving up 108.8 per 100 possessions. So like both of them have been positives. The Allen one is more extreme, even with like one lineup at the top that was pretty bad. I think that's worth monitoring. I think this is something we will have to like keep an eye on. Look at this. Look at the film. Maybe like it's like hard because it's also like the marketing part of this is just like when are we going to see Larry marketing with this? And that's like a thing that I think we need to kind of
Bro, that's a
get
question
our
we got
eyes on.
so many times during the live show. The answer is we don't know until there's like a clear update from the Cavs, like actual like email news blast from the media. We won't have a clear idea because JV Bickerstaff and this team will not say like, oh, he's a week away and he's 2 weeks into his recovery. High ankle sprains are tricky.
Yeah,
he's not necessarily part of the equation in this moment.
That is on the list of things to ask him Tuesday, though. Just on my personal list if we go there. Okay, Evan. After the break, we're going to talk about Jarrett Allen, who was not named an All-Star reserve as the Adam Silver named replacement in the Eastern Conference. But first, you're going to tell everyone about our friends at BetOnline.
You're absolutely correct. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as the Super Bowl is almost here with the Bengals taking on the Rams, and you can get your bets in right now at BetOnline. BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all your favorite sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just football. BetOnline has up-to-minute info on pro and college hoops, NHL, boxing, UFC, along with live, real-time updates on current games. Do not wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2022 season. Bet online, where the game starts.
Okay, Evan, moving on. Let's talk about Jarrett Allen, and then we're going to talk about some other backup point guard options the Cavs could look at. I just want to say, give me a scale of 1 to 10. How snubbed should Jarrett Allen feel right now?
I mean,
with LaMelo Ball being named an All-Star reserve ahead of him.
I talked about this a little bit because I went on Channel 19 and they asked me about this too. I'm like, I guess we could be prisoners of the moment and say that Jarrett Allen absolutely throttled LaMelo Ball in the Hornets. But hey, if this gets Jarrett Allen playing with a chip on his shoulder for the remainder of the season because people's biggest gripe with him is sometimes he looks indifferent on the court and a little too passive, this is a good thing for the Cavs, which is an unfortunate thing for the fans. I think he should have gotten in. I'm always of the mentality that these are the most skilled basketball players in the world. And you are saying that, and I'm never going to say a player who is voted in as an all-star, whether it's through fan votes or coaches or anything like that, or the commissioner himself, like no player is deserving. Like there's a clear reason why they got selected. Is it disappointing Jarrett Allen didn't get picked? Yeah, as a personal like fan of this team or spectator in Chris Manning's case, I am disappointed not to see two Cavaliers represented. I'm not going to say, oh, he should have gotten in over Chris Middleton or LaMelo Ball or blah, blah, blah. Like you can make an argument about any of these players. It just sucks. It really does. But my argument is this event is supposed to represent the 24 best players in the league. I think there's something sus to the fact that you are not having the second best center in the Eastern Conference and the second best player on arguably one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference not represented in this event. That's just my gripe.
I think he should feel pretty snubbed.
No, he should feel snubbed, absolutely. But like at the same time, I'm just like I'm putting it in perspective too.
Yeah, I just kind of think like we should have 15-man rosters and like he should just be in the All-Star game. I think like him and Siakam and Drew Holiday, there's a bunch of dudes that should feel like annoyed about this. Yeah, he's just been ridiculous in a way that I think is, and like this like just could be one of those situations where like Mobley just like ends up being the guy for the Cavs in the front court going forward, and like it kind of ekes away from Mobley or from Allen or whatever. And I tend to think that this was like this is like not the window, but I think Allen's just like very deserving, and it would have been cool to see just like It would have just been cool 2 guys in Cleveland get it, but, like, LaMelo's deserving all that stuff, and I get it's also just, like, LaMelo in the All-Star game is probably, frankly, just, like, more appetizing than, like, Jarrett Allen, like, running the floor at a really high level, you know? Like, LaMelo's gonna do some of LaMelo stuff, and I kind of that probably comes into the decision here, just to some degree, because LaMelo's LaMelo. All right, Evan, you are gonna now we're gonna go through a couple of backup point guard options the Cavs could fit into their JaVale McGee exception. So here I put on YouTube, we're gonna throw up some names. I'll read them out. Here's the names: Campazzo from Denver, Michael Carter Williams, Avery Bradley, Aaron Holiday, Austin Rivers, also from Denver, Alfred Payton, Raul Neto, Dennis Smith Jr., and Jalen Brunson. Okay, so Evan, those are names. I
Jalen
would
Brunson is not going to be traded for, but his
no.
salary fit in, so that's why I included
Yeah,
his name.
yeah, he is not a real thing. He's gonna if so he gets traded, it's because a team's gonna pay him lots of money, and the Cavs would not be a team that would pay him lots of money. Do you have a name on that list that you particularly like?
I mean, I like Facu. I like Raul Neto. Like, he provides you those Matthew Dellavedova kind of like minutes. Avery Bradley, if you want a more veteran presence. You and I really banged the Austin Rivers drum in the preseason. I'm hard out on Dennis Smith Jr. and Alfred Payton. But I think of like just all these names on this list, I think Michael Carter Williams is the most gettable. So if you take that McGee exception, you slap the Miami pick you just got with Caris LeVert onto it and ship that off, I think you could get Michael Carter Williams from Orlando. And I'm going to pull up his averages as I talk, just so I can have it in front of me when I talk about him. But he's averaging 10.3, or that's on his career. He's averaging 8.8 points, 4.5 rebounds, and 4.2 assists in about 26 minutes per game for the Magic. He's played 31 games this season. The Magic are trying to be bad. I think they need to prioritize their young guards. We can just take this off real quick so we can look at our pretty faces. But
yes,
I think MC Dub would make a lot of sense. And you know what? You're trading an exception for him. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I'm just of the camp and the mentality. We're like, yes, I think Brandon Goodwin's fun, but you saw last night against the Pacers maybe why he isn't playing in the rotation on a night-to-night basis and why it's just kind of situational right now. And also Rajon Rondo just cannot physically play 35, 40 minutes a night or even 25, 30 minutes a night. Like, I think 20 minutes is his sweet spot on a night-to-night basis. And you need to make a clear upgrade at point. And if you aren't going to be able to go like package together, say like Dylan Windler, Kevin Pangos, a second round pick, and maybe a little other salary to make it work, to go get like Dennis Schroeder from Boston because they're trying to get it below the luxury tax and just kind of shed some salary in general. You kind of got to look elsewhere and maybe look at some of those crappy teams like Orlando who are trying to be bad, have like a stable of young guards as we talked about, or you and I talked about off the air a little bit. And you try and go grab MC Dub, and he just serves as your backup point. Like, I think that's a pretty inoffensive player to go pick up.
Yeah, I think here's my follow-up question to that. I think that could make sense. I don't know if it moves the needle enough for me to like want to give up a pick to do it. It's just, it's fine. If
I'm asking you this, Chris, if it's like the
Yeah.
59th or 60th pick,
Oh,
realistically,
yeah. It's but I would do that pick, but not the Spurs pick.
no, I'm not saying no. If it's the Spurs pick, you just hang up the phone. If it's the Heat, I think the Heat pick could make it work.
Yeah, I think
It's just
the other
another
thing
asset for a rebuilding team.
The other thing I would wonder is just like, Evan, would you rather find another wing or like get like a Nemhard onto the 15-man roster just for like wing depth purposes, or would you rather go get another guard?
I'd rather go get another guard right now because LeVert isn't a point guard. I know Rick Carlisle said he's a point guard in a two guard's body when Indiana was in town Sunday night. I'd rather just get a more reliable option because that was my concern with Ricky Rubio too, is because Rubio had injury issues in the past and he's older and the Cavs were playing him a ton of minutes. And I was worried something was going to happen then because the Cavs, when they had Rubio, when he was fully healthy, had like a truly competent backup point guard behind Darius Garland for the first time in his career. You need to have that back again. Like yes, Rondo could be that in theory, but I'll believe it when I see it. And why not get a little bit extra emergency or insurance depth to put behind him is my thought process. But I mean, like, yeah, if you can go get a wing, like hell, if you go get Kendrick Williams for the Spurs pick, like if you can get Oklahoma City to agree to that and like you send some salary their way, yeah, go do that instead. But I don't know if a team is really going to want to talk shop with Cleveland when they don't have a first round pick to trade anymore. Most of their like non-touchable assets aren't going to do much, and it's not like Jaylen Brown or Brandon Ingram are suddenly going to become available.
Yeah, I think that's right. Be fascinated to see if they do anything else. Be fascinated to see if the Cavs do make any more moves. That is going to be it though for this episode of Locked On Cavs. We'll be back Wednesday ahead of Cavs Spurs, which probably will be the Caris LeVert debut. He's scheduled to speak to the media, I believe, on Tuesday as well. So we'll hear from him and pick his brain and report back with some more information for you on Wednesday. But until next time, this has been Locked On Cavs. I'm Chris. That's Evan. Everyone be well, be safe, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.